would very much indeed. Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Graham Carr-Jones. I'm chairing this evening. So, welcome to the newly named Dorset Council Landlords Forum. For the first time, we're presenting both virtually and in person. Therefore, greetings to wherever you are joining us from this evening. Good evening to our online visitors. This is our first Landlords Forum since 2019, and we have seen some significant changes and challenges in the private rented sector, both for landlords and tenants since then. First, I must tell you what to do in the event of an emergency or if the fire alarm goes off. We're not expecting a fire alarm tonight, so if you do hear it, please follow the exits located at the back of the side of the room, head towards the front of the building where you came in, and that will hopefully get you located there. Toilets, you've heard, are located through the back doors and out to the left. We've got several colleagues from the housing teams at Dorset Council joining us tonight to explain how they can help your tenants, what Dorset Council can offer you as landlords, and to give you an insight into the impact of the cost of living on our clients. Our guest speakers will provide an insight into the current mortgage market and energy performance certificates, EPCs, I think we're familiar with, which we trust that we hope you can find that helpful. The private rented sector is both a challenge and an opportunity for landlords and for tenants. We hope tonight that you will assist you as professionals to build on your good work in sustaining your tenancies. We hope that you find tonight informative, and if you have any questions for the speakers, I'd ask that you could hold on to that thought, and we'll have a brief Q&A at the end of the forum. The first speaker tonight is Sarah Smith. She's the lead housing officer doing the housing strategy at Dorset Council, and she's going to tell us about how important the forthcoming consultation is as the council looks to develop its new housing strategy. So without further ado, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. So as Graham said, I'm Sarah Smith. I'm the housing strategy lead. And I just wanted to take just a short moment of your time to talk about...
Can you speak up a bit because you're very quiet?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll move forward a little bit as well. So yes, so I'm here to talk about the housing strategy. And really your place in the housing strategy and how important it is that we get your views on that. So the first thing is, what's a housing strategy and why do we need one? So the government, under the Local Government Act, says that all local authorities have to have a housing strategy. And there's a little bit of a myth that housing strategies just relate to social housing, when in fact it relates to all types of housing in the area. And a housing strategy sets out the local authorities' aims and the objectives for meeting issues relating to housing in that area. It's not the local plan, which often you get confused with. That's a separate document, but they do link together. So what I wanted to just reflect on with you in this room tonight are some of the issues and challenges around housing and around private renting in the area. You may not know that private renting in the 2021 census made up for 17% of all housing in Dorset. That's actually second to home ownership. Often people think that the social housing is next, but actually social housing is only at 12%. So you as landlords play a really important role when it comes to providing housing in this area. The median wage for people in Dorset is £29,200. The average house price to buy is 11 times that wage. And that means for most people in Dorset, buying a home is just not simply achievable. There's been a real time decline in wages of 3.1%. And at the same time, rent's gone up by 4.4%. So our tenants, your tenants, and the residents of Dorset are really starting to feel that pinch. The decline relates to inflation and cost of living. You as landlords have had to pinch yourselves from the property efficiency side. And for some of you, that might have had quite an impact. And I think you're hearing about those things that we can do to help on that later. And then there is the Renters Reform Bill, which I know from the press seems a bit scary. And it could be quite off-putting. But I think there are some winners and losers in there, and it will depend on types of landlords and really whether you are prepared to support the things within the Renters Bill. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. I thought we're missing the fact that we've got 4,800 people registered on the council's waiting list for housing at the moment. We, last year, I think, let somewhere in the region of 600 properties. So you can see that's quite a big gap from the amount of people that need housing and the housing that through social landlords that we can provide. And there's been a 15% increase in homelessness, which I think it just goes to show the pressures that are on the housing teams in Dorset, trying to find housing for 4,800 people when we haven't got the accommodation, and then with the additional 40% of homelessness. So these are the real challenges that we're facing as a local authority, that our residents are facing, but also that you as landlords are facing. And it's really important for the housing strategy that we hear from you. You have a voice, and we want to hear that voice. And there are two ways that you can do that. So the first way is that at the end of this, I will be sending you out a link, and I think it's going to come through Andy as well. It's a really short questionnaire. Just want to get your views, your concerns, just what you think about the situation as for you as a private landlord in Dorset. Don't have to leave your name. It can be done completely anonymously. But if you do want to get more involved, then please feel free to leave your email addresses, and then I can engage with you further. And then in July, we will have the public consultation. And at that point, it will go out for a 10-week consultation, and we'll have a second to get your. And you can contact me direct. I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have, any feedback that you want to give, how you talk to me. I'm open to doing any of those things, but it's really important you do get your views. That's the housing strategy. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more about your views and your plans for your properties in Dorset. That's it. That's me done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Who are our next speakers? We've got the Housing Options Resettlement Team, a housing offer to landlords. Who's taking that one?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, we're the resettlement team, and there's Neil Gilbert. Put your hand up.
The late arrival.
And
Yeah.
we've got a Jenny Howard. Hi. We've got a Claire Honor. We've got a Martin, who's not here with us today, Martin Saint, and Stephen Greer, who you'll be seeing later. Okay, so Jenny and I have got a couple of case studies. This is a piece of work that we did with a new landlord. She lives in Bournemouth, so it wasn't. She works full time, so it wasn't always easy for her to get back and forth. So she contacted our team and says, "I've just bought 2 flats, and I'd like them to come to Dorset, but I don't know what to do next." So I work with my colleagues in housing standards, and they advised me on what the landlady would need to do to enable her to rent that flat out legally. So we had a discussion about rental costs and what's the local housing allowances around here, and what we could expect clients to pay as a top-up. She was quite clear about the sort of clients that she wanted. So we took that to our team. We came up with a short list of about, I think it was 4 or 5 people that were working, because that's what the landlord wanted, no antisocial behaviour, because that's what the landlord was stipulating too. So we gave her a short list of clients, and she went through all their details, and she picked 2 or 3 to come and have a viewing. I did those viewings on a Saturday because she works full time and lives in Bournemouth, and she chose which client she thought would fit into her property the best. What else? So once the viewings were complete and she'd made her choice, I worked with my colleagues in the lettings team, who then did all the sort of paperwork side of things like the tenancy agreement and working out rent in advance and deposits and things like that to ensure the client could move in and would be able to pay those things back in a sustainable way. So now, as a result, the first flat was ready, and the next one needed quite a lot of work doing to it, so we supported her through that. So now we've got 2 local families, both working in sort of really key worker jobs in Weymouth. Their families are still here, they live near their families, the children could stay in the same schools. So for us, that was a really good result, and the landlady knows that if she buys future properties in this area, she can trust us with those.
Well, I'm clear.
Thank you.
Okay, are we? Go on.
Yeah. Hello. Hi, I'm Stephen. I work in the resettlement team alongside my colleagues and with my manager Ashley. And what Claire's given you a fantastic outline of what we do in the resettlement team. But I just want to just fill in a few details. And the first thing is just about talking the perception of homelessness. I'm fairly new to the council. I'm fairly new to the homelessness side of things. And a lot of people I'd spoken to before I came into the job were saying, oh, you're going to be working with people on the street, and it really isn't the case. We are working with families. We are working with young families. Both parents are working, doing everything that they can to remain in this beautiful part of the world that we live in. And it took about 30 seconds for me to realise who we were, that I wasn't going to be working on the streets. And it's really important that we try and maintain that, and we try and keep our community together. And I just wanted to sort of express to you that we are working with people who have found themselves in unfortunate situations through no fault of their own. But these are hard-working young families of the area, and we would love to be able to work with as many of you as possible to help keep them in our county. Claire's given you a really good outline with regards to the services that we offer. So part of our landlord incentive scheme, we have a rent and deposit bond. So we will assist. So the deposit bond, basically, we will come out, we will do an inventory, free inventory for you, and we will set the deposit at the agreed level. 5 weeks is the current legislation, and we will work with. So we will put the deposit bond in place for you. There'll be no money that needs to change hands. You don't need to worry about a deposit protection scheme. And the tenant, we set up a repayment scheme for the tenant to pay that up, pay that back over a set amount of time. So it takes the pressure off that initial costing for them. We will also do the same thing with the first payment of rent. The advantage for you is you can work with us and you can trust us to. You don't have to go through any ombudsman service at the end of the tenancy. You can talk to us and you can make a claim directly with us. We've got that inventory information. And then we can also do a rent and advance payment for the clients, for our customers. And that payment will come directly from us. So we will be able to make those first payments for you in advance of the tenancy. So again, it's got Dorset Council's on the bottom of the track. It's going to be okay. We can also offer, on top of that, we can also offer a pet bond. So if there are concerns, I know the rules are changing. I think that's been updated in the last few days. possibly going forward about pets. So we are able to offer pet bond on top of the deposit as well. So if there are any concerns about damage pets may cause, we'll hopefully alleviate some of that with a pet bond as well. I've briefly touched on the inventory service, and also we provide a free tenancy agreement service where we can draft all the tenancy agreement for you. We'll talk to you in advance about all of about the requirements that you have around the tenancy agreement. But it's the NR, and I always get this the wrong way around, NRLA agreement that we use. So it's the industry standard tenancy agreement. So I'm going to do these in the other order that they're at. One thing we also offer is ongoing tenancy support. We have a team in place that will be there on call. So if you do feel that the relationship between yourself and the tenant is breaking down, for whatever reason that might be, we are here. You can pick up the phone to us and say, we've been working with these people since the start. X or Y may have happened. Whatever it may have been, we can help, we can come in. So it doesn't have to be sort of a problem that separates the landlord-tenant relationship. We're there to help that and to keep that through the duration of the tenancy, however long that may be. And last but not least, we also offer a cash incentive for offering long-term tenancies. So for a 12-month tenancy, there are cash incentives of up to £4,000, depending on the size of the property, for any landlords who are willing to offer us properties with a minimum 12-month term. And the last thing I'd like to say is our families want to remain in the properties for long periods of times. We've just had one. I've just been working with someone who has left a tenancy that I believe is Lee here. No, that one of our colleagues set up about 9-10 years ago, and they're only just coming out at the end of that tenancy, and that is what we're finding. A lot of our tenants just want somewhere, and they want that security, that peace of mind. So we're working with people who will give you. There will be long-term, reliable tenants, which we've matched, as Claire has already spoken about. I'll pass you over to Jenny.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I'm part of the reassessment team as well. I just wanted to talk to you quite briefly about an example of really good partnership working. And this demonstrates really good, effective partnership working, and also relieving from homelessness amongst single people. So a landlord did approach us. He just purchased a 5-bedroom HMO in Weymouth. So we, Dorset Council, advised him on legislation, licensing, just to make sure it met all the right standards. And then I went out to visit him to have a look at the layout, judge, the size of the rooms and who might be suitable for this property. So for this particular HMO, we were looking at 5 single people. They all had a history of rough sleeping, but they were all tenancy ready. So they're going to be able to manage independently and engaging with support if they needed it. So once I'd visited the landlord and the HMO, we negotiated a rent price that each person would be able to afford. And then within the team, we drew a list together of suitable people, single people that might be suitable. Now we check affordability, we make sure that all the benefits are in place, so this person isn't being set up to fail, and that's really, really important. So we also arrange viewings, so we support these people to the viewing so the landlord can meet each individual person and see if they are a good fit for the property. We were quite careful with this that each person didn't have a history of antisocial behaviour, because you can imagine 5 different people, everyone is a different character. It can go quite wrong. So we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to have a transparent service and to make sure that everyone has a chance of succeeding. So once we'd arranged the viewings and supported people to the viewings, the landlord was happy to accept these 5 people. So what happens from there is we make sure we've got all the paperwork done our end, and as Stephen and Claire said, we can arrange for bonds or deposits. and we can also pay rent in advance. So those things were arranged, and when it came to the people moving in, we also apply for things like furniture grants, food vouchers, to make sure that these people are going into a property and they're set up. So once that's happened, we will then work with that person to offer them short-term support. We will update their universal credit. We will make sure the housing element is paid direct to the landlord. And then we will visit them for about 6 weeks afterwards. Some of the people in there needed longer term support, and we have tenancy sustainment officers that will continue to work with them to make sure that they are stable and happy and secure. Just checking I haven't missed anything else out. Yeah, so just wanted to give you an example of some of the other things that our team do. So it's not just families we're working with, but we do have a lot of single people. Some of them do have a history of rough sleeping, but we do work with them to get them tenancy ready and try to work with you landlords to sort of offer them a longer term home as well. So if you've got any questions about this, I think we've got question and answers at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we going on to Peter? Is this you?
Yeah, certainly me. Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Peter Bywater from Ridgewater Energy. Been doing these for many years. It's really been 4 years since the last one. I can't quite believe it. But here we are. So I'm here to talk about the MEES regulations primarily, but also the other support that landlords can get at the moment, which, as you're probably aware, is ever changing and always too complicated. So it's just a quick refresher on the timetable that we've all kind of been through with the minimum energy efficiency standards over the last few years. Obviously, EPCs came into being a long time ago now, probably about 2008, 2009. So there has been quite a lot of a long pathway to where we are now. But in terms of where we're heading to next, beyond the E standard, which we're working to now, the government is and apparently has approved the Band C requirement now. The only thing they haven't decided on currently is whether they will push ahead with a £10,000 spend cap or not. But as far as we've heard recently in related meetings, everything else is set and it will be going forward. Now, I would say in some respects, that's not very fair to landlords, given that they've been talking about this for the last 2 years or more, and it's been dragging its heels through various stages in the different houses. And only now are they about to announce that they're going to stick to that same timetable. But be aware that for new tenancies from April 2025, we could be looking at a C requirement. But bear in mind, there will still be the exemptions register. There will still be situations in which you can't achieve a certain rating of C, depending on the type of property that you're renting, depending on the recommendations that are on that energy performance certificate. So it's not a time to panic, it's a time to plan. And they're also on about April 2028 is a Band C for all existing tenancies. So these would be the ones that aren't new tenancies. So just recapping quickly on the type of things that might be at risk of being non-compliant. Obviously, when we're looking at the energy efficiency of a property, we're primarily looking at, most importantly, the fabric of the building. So the insulation that it has or hasn't got, the walls, the floors, the loft. They even do things like party wall insulation on certain ages of properties, but that is a bit more unusual and doesn't make a huge difference to the rating. We're obviously then talking about loft insulation, which is probably one of the easiest measures to do if you've got a proper loft, that is. Then you've got rooms in the roof, which are your top floors with the sloping ceilings. It might be dormer bungalows. It might be a flat that's contained entirely in the roof space. Again, that's something that will have a significant impact on energy ratings. And we've seen that a lot in the work that we've done in the past. Heating is obviously very important. And we'll talk a little bit more about what to avoid on the heating side. But we all know that gas boilers and things are going to get phased out, but that's only for new build from 2025. So they're not talking about ripping boilers out in a couple of years' time. So again, don't panic too much about that one. But obviously that will come through in time into the rest of the sort of built environment. So properties that might also be at risk of low ratings would be ones fired by oil or LPG. LPG's worse than oil when it comes to boilers and things like that on the ratings. Obviously single glazed windows, but to be honest, unless you've got very large glazed areas in older properties, the glazing doesn't make a huge amount of difference, which is why there usually isn't any grant funding for windows, because it's not a cost effective measure that saves a lot of money on the bills. It's mainly a comfort factor with windows. It's much more important to insulate the walls of a property than it is to replace windows. So hence there's never any grants for it. There's no such thing as a window scrappage scheme. There's no such thing as any kind of discount. That is just an installer and some clever marketing, or not so clever marketing, that they use. Also, if you've got more exposed walls, more walls to the outside, if they're uninsulated in particular, you're more likely to have a lower EPC rating as well. And obviously, period and older properties may be more susceptible to that. So we always say, best way to approach this is, first of all, obviously take advice, independent advice if you can do, rather than from your electrician or your gas engineer or anybody else, who A, might have a vested interest, and B, won't understand what energy efficiency actually means in relation to an EPC. Some do, obviously, not being unfair to all of them. Follow the recommendations. That is the main thing in terms of the legislation. You only need to follow the recommendations on there. Having said that, there's other measures you can do which will make a difference to the rating that aren't in the recommendations. For example, if you changed an electric meter to a dual rate meter, that would improve the rating, but you won't see it on an EPC. EPCs will be updated soon, and they will take into account smart thermostats, battery storage for solar, and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. Obviously, we're unlikely to see a battery storage system on a rented property just yet. It's probably a bit over the top. The cheap things, the LED light bulbs, the hot water cylinder jackets. Even if you've got yellow foam on your cylinder, you can still benefit from putting a jacket on there, because it's only about 25 mil thick in terms of the insulation on those older cylinders. So again, 15 quid, that might make a couple of points difference. Programmers and timers, often you see on an EPC, there isn't a room thermostat, or there isn't TRVs on the radiators. That again can make a bit of a difference on the rating of a few points if you're looking to try and improve those. And then you've got your slightly more expensive measures, some of which will be possibly grant funded in some situations. So your cavity wall, solid wall insulation, loft underfloor, room in roof, and flat roof insulation works. Obviously, if you're doing maintenance and refurbishment work, some of these measures like flat roof insulation, if you're replacing a flat roof now and it represents a certain percentage of the overall footprint, you would have to upgrade that as part of building regulations anyway. Equally the same with those purpose-built blocks. If someone's doing a big replacement of the roof there, they'll probably find that would have to be done. They've no longer got a choice of whether it's a maintenance or an improvement argument. It would have to be done, simple as that. Also, obviously, replacing boilers for a higher efficiency modern boiler can add some points. And also the high heat retention storage heaters, which are really the only electric heating system that's going to improve a rating, which again, I'll go into in a bit more detail in a minute. Heat pumps, again, not something that's really deployed that much in the rental sector at the moment, but that is the trajectory we're going down at the moment. That is certainly being pushed a lot harder than the potential of a hydrogen system, because hydrogen will simply not work at the moment on existing gas infrastructure and be far too expensive even in the medium term to change that around. Next slide, please. So, we've heard anecdotally, some landlords think, well, I won't get caught out, it'll be fine. I'll just chance it. I won't bother getting an EPC. I won't try and push my EPC up to where it should be. There are fines that have been issued. There has been a case now in Dorset, as you'll see here, where a landlord failed to meet the energy efficiency standard for their G-rated property. The landlord received a proportionate fine of £750, bearing in mind they can charge up to, I think it's £5,000 for non-compliance on some of these issues. That is what seems a more reasonable approach to it. So they were issued a notice. They failed to act in accordance with that notice. There were some easy measures that could have been taken under the spend cap to address those issues, and they weren't addressed. So after a lot of coaxing and encouragement and help and information and advice, because that's the approach that obviously Dorset Council are trying to use, they had to go to the enforcement action and issue a fine. Did you want to add to any of that, Steve? Does that kind of cover it? There's a bit more. There's a bit more on the next slide anyway.
Covered it well, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, I think
right.
the emphasis is on we're all working around all the I think it should come as reassurance around how to.
Yeah. Okay. So there's been a project in the Dorset Council area. Dorset Council were successful in securing some funding, which various other local authorities in the country were also working on this on the same kind of project. So a plan was submitted, that was approved, and basically the council officers worked very hard on contacting any F4G rated EPC properties in Dorset, offering help and advice to see if they could improve these properties. We were also part of that as well. We were able to give some advice, access into grants and some ideas about how that particular EPC could be upgraded in the best possible and most cost-effective way. They also checked all the exemption applications to ensure they were properly made. I think the figure was on one of my last presentations that like 65% of them weren't properly made. And I suspect because some of those were hanging over from when there was no requirement to spend any money to improve the rating, I guess. But I guess there was other ones that may be incorrectly put through as well. So as a result of all that work, 91 compliance notices were served. 2 penalty notices issued for ongoing non-compliance. Actually says there, I got that wrong, is that up to £10,000 fine. So that £750 looks even more reasonable than before. So the housing standards team who worked on this, obviously continuing to check any properties that come onto the market. So there is a churn in the market of properties that come on. So those are still being checked to see if they are compliant. And if they're not, they'll receive a letter and they will be offered that help and support as well to upgrade those. Again, it says that no surprise, the issue is predominantly in rural rented homes that are off the gas network, because those are the hardest ones to improve and more expensive to improve. So it's no surprise they're the ones that tend to fall foul. Just quickly touching on mortgages. For those of you who maybe have remortgaged or had to take out a new mortgage, you'll be aware that very often now, even on remortgages, they're asking for energy performance certificates that are no more than 2 years old on your property. We've spoke to letting agents who've told us that landlords have had sales that have fallen through when they're selling to another landlord because the EPC wasn't high enough. Some of those mortgage lenders have insisted on up to £30,000–40,000 worth of work before those sales would go through. That was on HMO sales and things like that were happening over in Bournemouth for a letting agent we work with. So a lot more is happening around energy efficiency in terms of the mortgage sector. There are some requirements coming on for lenders where they're going to have to report on their lending portfolio in regards to what the average EPC score is for their whole portfolio lending. And in time, I suspect they'll receive some kind of incentive or punishment for not achieving a certain roadmap to improving it. Also, there are green mortgages, but they're not terribly attractive at the moment, to be completely frank. They are improving, they're getting better. The general idea is if you buy a new build property, for example, that is already energy efficient, you might better get a better rate. But also, if you commit to improving that EPC rating, you may also get a slightly better rate. But I'm talking about 0.1%, which right now this doesn't make a lot of sense for people just to choose that as a product over anything else. But again, something to keep your eye on. We'd like to see further announcements about decarbonising heat as well, and where we're going to go in terms of heat pumps and everything else. But for now, again, say don't worry too much about that. There are £5,000 vouchers available towards heat pumps. Again, I don't expect as many landlords thinking I'm going to upgrade my rental property and spend 12 grand on a heat pump and get a £5,000 voucher off. But again, you know, it's just good to know that it's there. So pitfalls to look out for. The number one is landlords who are incorrectly advised to rip out storage heaters and put in on-peak panel heaters just because they've been told that it's got this fantastic thermostat on it and a fantastic ceramic core and all the rest of it. The fact is, if it's an on-peak heater, it's an on-peak heater. The EPC currently doesn't recognise any difference between the most fantastic £1,000 heater to the cheapest £200 heater. That again will change as the EPC it develops and becomes a more reliable tool. But at the moment, if you've got old storage heaters, if you're going to upgrade them, go for high heat retention storage heaters. If you want to improve the rating, don't go for on-peak panel heaters. It is a mistake. Also, if you are looking to do upgrades, if you're looking for funding, grant assistance, then usually it is dependent on having a tenant in the property. It's no good waiting until you've got a vacancy and you're looking to relet and it's empty to apply for grants, because you won't get any. So be aware that you're going to have to carry out these upgrades while you've got a tenant in the property as well. Most grants are based on tenant circumstances, but you'd be surprised sometimes what those circumstances are. Sometimes, and we've got grants at the moment, for example, Healthy Homes Dorset, where just by being over 65, as long as your income is below 75,000 a year, you're going to qualify if you're owner occupier or private tenant. So that's just one criteria. And don't assume you can't do anything to a listed building. And yes, you do need an EPC for it. That is another common misconception. You can often do things internally on listed buildings. It's externally which causes the most issue. But it's always best to speak to the planning department, and there is new guidance out around listed buildings in Dorset from the planning department about what you can and can't do roughly, and what you might need to do to apply to do it. So how are we doing for time, by the way? All right, yeah, okay. So just a little very short summary on some of the funding that is available. It is horrific, it is complicated, it's horrible, it makes our life an absolute misery, but that's why we exist. If you're not sure if you qualify for funding or not, pick up the phone, send us an email. Under our Healthy Homes Dorset project, for example, we can give free energy advice to anybody. That's regardless if you're living in a 20-bed mansion or if you're living in a bedsit. It doesn't matter to us. You can pick up the phone and you can say, I'm doing a barn conversion and I want to put an air source and a ground source heat pump in it and solar. We'll try and help you, give you some independent advice on that. Equally, you might say, where can I pick up an LED light bulb from for £1? We'll cover it all, basically, under that scheme for free as well. And it'll be independent advice, and we'll obviously signpost you to the help that's needed. Energy company obligation is the mainstay grant, which is an obligation on the utility companies to provide funding to help us upgrade the energy efficiency of our properties. It has become incredibly complex. There are all kinds of whys and wherefores, and when you can and can't do things. For landlords in particular, you have to have anything. Obviously, you've got to have a tenant that qualifies to start with. You then got to have an EPC. I think I'm right in saying it has to be a D and an E, because they don't want to help landlords get out of F&G situations, because they should already be out of them in most cases. You have to then have either a heat pump, solid wall insulation, connection to a district heating system, or a first-time gas central heating system before you can have anything else under RECO. And you'll be very lucky if you've got anyone, a property and a person that actually meets the criteria. So we will start with this because it's probably one of the most horrible ones. But I'm going to go on and talk more about some of the other things that are available. A little bit, thank you. I think we've gone a bit too far there. Okay, it's gone missing then. Okay, so there we go. You got on. There's another one. There's another 2 slides somewhere. I'll start talking about them anyway. So we've got LEAP, Local Energy Advice Partnership. This is for any tenant, social tenant, private tenant, owner occupier. If their household income is less than £31,000 a year, or they get a disability or income related benefit, they can have a free home visit. We will take loads of free stuff with us. So we'll fit LED light bulbs, radiator reflectors, remote control sockets, draft proof into wooden doors and windows, letterboxes. We'll do internal draft strips to some of the main rooms. Anything basically that they're offering at the time. LEAP will also supply free appliances. So if your tenants are responsible for their own white goods, their own appliances, and they're over 9 years old or broken, and they're not screwed into the worktops and not fitted, then potentially they could get assistance with brand new appliances through LEAP as well, up to 2. So they could have a fridge freezer and a washing machine, for example, for nothing under LEAP if they qualify. LEAP will also give them some really good advice, refer them to other agencies. We obviously flag up safeguarding referrals if someone's really struggling. And we do refer on for income maximisation work. The biggest income maximisation case to date was in Christchurch, and we found, I think, £23,000 worth of backdated benefits for a disabled client. So that's really important part of the service as well. But we do also look at insulation. We do look at condensation and give them advice about condensation, because as you know, a lot of them don't know how to control ventilation in the property and how to heat it properly. So we will go through all of that, as well as all the heat controls, and give them advice about how to actually use that heating system properly, as well as part of that. Healthy Homes Dorset, which is also not on there, we're contracted to deliver that by both councils in Dorset and Public Health. Like I said before, free advice for anybody in Dorset regardless, and then it also provides insulation as well for free to a whole host of clients. So anyone with a child under 5, anybody over 65 with that £75,000 income threshold. But as a standalone, any health condition, recent triple fall, recent bereavement, if someone's pregnant, if they are MOD or ex-MOD employees, and any other vulnerability, basically, then will qualify under that scheme for some assistance potentially with some insulation works. Finally, we've got Home Upgrade Grant, which is a government competition that we've bid into with both councils to do more energy efficiency work. When it comes to private landlords qualifying for their properties, again, I think we are looking at the D and the E eligibility on the EPC. It might be that the property is in a lower super output area, so it might be in the Park District in Weymouth, might be on Portland, it might be in the back end of Bridport, around all the Magna housing area. Those will stand a standalone qualification for assistance under that scheme. Landlords are expected to make a third financial contribution towards the work. But I know we've seen some cases where a landlord's got maybe one more thing to do, and that one thing might be putting PV panels on the roof, for example. And right now they're thinking, well, that's £5,000 or £6,000 I'm not going to spend. But if that comes down to £1,600 to get the EPC to a C, all of a sudden that might become a bit more attractive. So that's the sort of thing it might be able to help with. But we're going to be doing heat pumps and all sorts of more expensive measures under that funding. But in my world, that's exciting, because obviously if I've got to deal with lofts and cavities all day, that's really, really boring. But doing these kinds of things is a bit more exciting. The non-exciting bit is, again, the complexity around what we're allowed to do, when we're allowed to do it, in what order we've got to do it. Again, that's our headache. You know, if you're not sure and this is something of interest, we've got flyers. You can give us a ring. It's not properly launched yet. It's launching next month. But that gives you an idea of some of the things that are available right now to help people. So I probably okay. I'll just finish off with this one then. Have we got time? Yeah. Okay. So final thoughts then. BAMC is coming. Like I say, get good advice, make a plan, cost it. Bear in mind your tax incentives. Do things gradually. You know, you can do window by window. You can do high heat retention, by room. You can also, you know, split those things down to make them more manageable for yourself. But if you know what you've got to do, what roughly it's going to cost, then you can at least plan that and you know where you're going to get to. Equally, taking that advice from the planning department, from the guys at Housing Standards about you know, the help they can provide and the assistance that they can give, so you know what you're allowed to do and not, and what the priority might be. Evidence any improvements. Take photographs of any work that's going to be hidden after you've done it. So if you have got a room in the roof property up in the slopes of the roof, and you do take the ceilings down and put insulation boards in there, make sure you get some stage photographs of that. So when you have the energy assessment redone, there's evidence, which is what is needed, to prove that you've done that work. Grant funding will count towards the spend cap. So if you can, as I said before, if you can get a few £1,000s towards a solar PV panel on the roof, and you've got a 10,000 spend cap, then that could be £6,000 worth of overall work, including the grant, including VAT, if applicable, towards your spend target as well. I just want to give a warning about spray foam insulation, because that is awful, to be honest. A lot of people we've been to have had it ripped out of their roof again. I just wanted to mention it because it's something that can be done correctly and can be suitable for some properties, but primarily it's a good application in the industrial sector and not so much in the domestic sector. We have seen a lot of issues with it, and it's been widely muted that there have been problems. So please stay away from that if you can do. If you're looking for trusted traders, buywithconfidence.gov.uk. It's Trading Standards' own trusted trader platform. It's not Checker Trade. It's not Which. I could get our company onto either of those in a day just by paying some money. These are properly vetted companies, proper feedback, and you'll be a lot safer using contractors through those guys. And finally, we've got some money and energy saving guides. Thank you. My model over there, Adrian. Thank you very much. That you can take away, which has got all sorts of useful information for yourselves, but obviously for your tenants, about saving money on the bills, about budgeting, about the assistance agencies that are out there that they can contact for help during these times. Yeah, that's the final thought bit. So please give me a shout if you need any help or advice. There's the details at the end there. You can give us an email at the info address, or give us a ring. Be happy to give any free advice or help that we can do. Any of that stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Going to hear from the team on the impact of the cost of living.
Thank you. I'll be joined by my colleague Lorraine as well. Yeah, please do. Yeah. So the tenancy sustainment team, and hello, I'm Ashley. The tenancy sustainment team were created October, November last year as a result of everything we've seen pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and post-pandemic, in response to the number of homes applications, advice requests, and the response that we needed to give to the general public. So our bright idea was tenancy sustainment. What can we do to get in there early? What can we do to prevent homelessness occurring for landlords and tenants? So with that said, we created this team. I've got Liz at the front, who deals mainly with our rough sleeping cohort in the community. I've got Becky, who deals with our offenders in the local community and ex-offenders. I've got Debbie, who deals with everyone else you can think of that needs our help, and also Lorraine, who does that too. So what do? We get out there and we go and work with the tenants that need us most. We will sustain tenancy. So if we've got tenants coming to us saying, I'm in crisis, Ashley, I've lost my universal credit, or my job hours have changed, meaning my income has had an impact, and negatively so, Lorraine will get in her car and off she goes to see the tenant in the community to do what she can to sustain that tenancy and prevent homelessness from occurring. And what I mean by that is to stop a notice being served to that tenant or their social housing tenancy ending. So we will provide a range of housing advice alongside our housing officers and our triage team. We will help clients apply for grants, loans, extra benefits. We will income maximise, and we will help navigate the world of debt for them. We know debt is affecting many of our clients and the wider community, and so we need to be hot on how to prevent customers getting in further debt. So we will signpost to other agencies as well. So essentially, we are there very early on. We don't want our customers to go through the homelessness journey. It's a traumatic time for our customers. It is a difficult time for landlords to navigate at the same time, and ultimately, everyone deserves a home. So that's why our tenancy sustainment team was created. And we're going to talk to you about a couple of case studies. Yeah, please do.
I was called into a couple in their mid-60s. They had been renting their property at £475 a month since 2004. The landlord sold it, and the new landlord wanted the rent to be increased at £800 a month. So I went in because they didn't feel they could afford £800 a month. So I went in, did an affordability check with them, helped them apply for benefits, signposted them to the Citizens Advice Bureau for the debt relief, and actually working with the landlord to avoid the court action because they couldn't stay in the property anyway because of medical needs. So it was helping them get on the housing register, bid for a property, whilst helping them claim benefits to afford the new increase in rent, keeping both parties happy until they were able to successfully get a ground floor property from the housing register. But it avoided court action from both sides and kept both sides happy. Okay.
So I had a landlord approach the housing team with a Section 21. He needed to release the funds from his property, pay for care costs for a family member. We know that happens. What this meant was that a tenant was potentially at risk of homelessness, and the current rent was £500 a month. This tenant, bless him, he was 77 years of age. He had never faced this in his renting history, and so he came to us for the support. He actually was still working because he couldn't afford to live at 77 without still having to work. A sad state of affairs, but we're seeing this a lot more commonly. What did we do? So we negotiated with the landlord to ensure that the tenant could stay there, but the landlord wanted a rent increase from 500 to 900. So that's £400 a month more that the landlord would like from that tenant. Could he afford it was the question we were asking. He doesn't want to move, so what can we do to keep him there? We, again, looked at his affordability. We made multiple claims for extra benefits for him. We did an in-work calculation and an out-work calculation to see what was best for that chap at the time. We actually got an attendance allowance award for him because of his health and ailments relating to him. We signposted him to a wealth of health agencies that were able to better his quality of life in the property. And we gave him some debt advice from our colleagues in Citizens Advice. He also had a massive overdraft because of all of the debt that he got himself into. We contacted the bank, they closed down all those accounts, and he now has one bank account without an overdraft. Huge when overdraft was being applied every day with an interest accruing on top. So landlord got the £900. Landlord is happy with the outcome. The client has now got a choice. He can, in the short term, with all the extra benefits we helped for him achieve, he can stay there in the short term. He also is now on the housing register and can be actively bidding. Because of his age, he has access to sheltered housing in the wider community of the property market. And he also may be able to stop working because we've now got him attendance allowance. Quality of life at 77. He's happy, tenant's happy, he has choice in his accommodation. Landlord's happy, he's getting £900 a month, which is the market rate of that area. No court action was taken on anyone, and the debts are now sorted. Those are two cases of many that we have dealt with. So yeah, we're a proud team. Thank you.
So is it Emma?
It is.
Emma, ladies and gentlemen, you know, if Carlsberg did mortgage advisors, Emma would be it.
Thank you. I'll take that. Okay, so I'm Emma Ward. I work for Temple Mortgage up in Poundbury, so not too far. I'm doing a little presentation today. I have kind of gone back to basics, so I apologise for anybody if I am making them suffix or anything like that. But if anybody does want any more in depth, I will tell you at the end how to get my business card and take anything forward that you want to. Okay. So buy to lets is a buy-to-let is basically a product that is a mortgage, but for people that want to buy a property to let it out. So instead of being regulated like a residential property, it has different elements that mortgage lenders look at. With buy-to-let mortgages, they need generally bigger deposits because they're for investment purposes. So the minimum at the minute is usually around about 25. There are some pushes at around about 20, but there are even lenders out there currently that would expect to have a 40% deposit. So they have tightened up around the board on investment properties and buy-to-lets. They also look at, when they're looking at income, it's usually done solely on what the property can achieve rental. However, saying that, there are a few lenders out there that will look at your income and top it up. It's called top slicing, and they will look at it to see if we need a little bit more for you. Okay, it's very hard currently with rents being as they are and rentals being as they are, the interest rates and everything, the way that they manage it and look at the affordability, it has dramatically dropped what you could borrow this time last year to what you can able to do this year, I'm afraid to say. However, that doesn't take the opportunity out of investments. You just have to get the right advice so that you know where to go. And they will also look at your credit history now, and they do generally want to know just about everything as they would a residential mortgage. So long gone are the days where they just said, okay, it's that property and I only want to know about that property. It's usually about everything now. Okay. And interest rates for buy-to-lets are usually higher than regulated residential mortgages. But saying that, at the minute, they're very on par. But we'll have a little look at some of the rates later, just so that you've got a bit of an idea of the best ones out there. Okay. So a market overall. So despite the economic challenges, the political uncertainty, and obviously the cost of living crisis, the buy-to-let market has actually remained robust last year. And although the Bank of England keeps raising its rates, professional landlords in many cases are still in a better position. The market's probably not been, the market perhaps has not been as favourable as it used to be. However, it is getting back on track towards the end of this year, we hope. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that when I go through the rates. But for those landlords that are focused on low yielding properties, so they're the ones with 1 or 2 properties, the interest rate has made the market a little bit more challenging, but there is still good opportunities for investments for those professional investors that want to expand their portfolio. And I'll come on to some different ideas. Tenancy demand then, well, I think you've heard, tenancy demand is a must. It's really remained strong. The latest survey from the Royal Institute of the Chartered Surveyors showed that tenancy demand has continued to rise, and where the supply of rental properties is going in the opposite direction, it's kind of having a misalignment. So it is actually forcing yourselves to put up rent. Data from the Office of National Statistics shows that the annual percentage change in rents across all regions has increased, and that's even including in London. So in the 12 months up to December of last year, rental prices for the UK, and this is excluding London because their increase was 4%, it actually increased by 4.3%. And that's an increase from 4.2 in November of that year, which is the strongest annual percentage increase that it has been since November of 2015. So the rental increases are there. There is a home track data, which is more focused on new people letting. And actually that report is even higher because they're saying that it's 12.1 as an annual increase in rent. So it's suggesting that you guys are having to put up more rentals every time a new tenant then comes in. Okay. But buy-to-lets do seem attractive still. So looking at managing the rates, so recent interest rates throw further challenges, obviously with the latest Bank of England rate, because they're so lovely at the Bank of England, they thought that we deserved another hike, so they put it up to 4.5 last week, which we really didn't want them to do, but however, they did it. Highest it's been in the last 15 years. How economics see that? They actually see the Bank of England rate potentially going up again one more time before the end of the year. But what they do then predict is come November, December time, that will then start to decrease. By the time next year comes, they reckon, and obviously nobody's got a crystal ball, I wish I had, I'd be on a beach somewhere now. They reckon by the time December of next year comes, they're hoping the Bank of England will be back down to 3%. So everybody keep your fingers crossed, especially those coming out of fixed rates, including myself. So there are other options, and somebody was talking about HMOs earlier. So for investors that may want to start combat in interest rates, such property investment plans that incorporate properties like the HMOs, where it is a complex plan and lenders are quite strict about HMOs. So you need potentially somebody like myself to help you through that plan, but we can. Once you're there though, it can mitigate having rental arrears, because you're having 5 people, as they said earlier, instead of just one person renting that property. So it kind of mitigates that. If one person doesn't pay their rent, you've still got the other 4 hopefully coming in as well. It also should gain higher yields, because you can then put the rental at a stage where they can all afford it. Whereas if somebody's renting on their own at £900, they may feel better in a property shared with others that they can then get for £300-400. It's going to make their life easier, and it's also going to then make yourselves easier, and it gives that more protection for you. And also another way to mitigate it is fixed rates. Now I know they have gone up, I'm sorry about that, but they are a way of mitigating if you have got a tenant in there and you want to be fixed in for certain periods. There are still lenders out there. There even is a 1-year fixed rate currently, up to 5 years, and there are even longer term fixed rates. And at the minute, the longer you fix, the lower the rate. However, we'll talk about that when I talk about rates, which is now. So looking at some of the rates available at the minute. Now, this is if you've got a 40% deposit, so it's under 60% loan to value, so it's the best rates out there to start with. Okay, there's a 1 year at 3.89, a 2 year at 3.69, and a 5 year at 3.94. So I did this presentation, this slide on the 12th, but I did check that today to see if they are all still available, and they are. Now I have to caveat that because they look really great rates at the minute in today's market. They have some very high arrangement fees. So when people look at rates, it's not always the lowest is the best. Might scare you to think that's got a £7,500 arrangement fee on one of them. So it's not about the rate. It's about looking at that whole package of what that interest rate can do for you. So you might find that when you're actually looking at the rates, that a higher rate is slightly better if it's got a lower cost. So that's where I kind of come in and look at the full picture for you and look at what is more cost effective over however long you want to fix it. Because each time you fix it, there genuinely is a fee to pay. Or you can look at no fees completely, but the rate will be slightly higher. But it's what your circumstances allow you to do. The best tracker rates, and these were quite popular at the beginning of the year because they thought, well, let's go on to a tracker rate where you're not tied in usually. And then we'll watch the market go for the next kind of 6 to 12 months. And then if we want to jump onto a fixed rate, we can, because we're no penalty. No, lenders are becoming a little bit wise to that. So trackers, believe it or not, a lot of them now have early redemption charges, and they're tying you in for 2 years. There are a few lenders still that aren't, but just beware that if you do look at a tracker at the minute, not all of them are like they used to be and have no penalty. They will still allow you to have the flexibility over payments, but they may still keep you there for a minimum of 2 years. Okay, so just beware. And then if we look at under 75%, so that's doing the 25% deposit, your best one on a 2-year deal at the minute is 5.49, and your 5-year is 4.69. Now, these don't have horrendous fees, but they do still have fees. Okay. So that's kind of looking at rates, and I've talked about where they predict them to be. There is another promising factor that is being looked into, and a lot of people have started talking about it, and it's build to rent. Now, this is a model becoming increasingly more popular with developments. So it's basically a development where they're literally building them for properties for people to rent. So it's quite a big, for you guys, it's quite a good opportunity. Data from the British Property Federation and Savills show that by the year 2032, 8% of the UK rental homes are going to be in these purpose-built, compared to in October of last year, which was only 1.5. Okay, it's the new take on a new build, basically. Talking about EPCs earlier, it's another way of kind of looking at it, because it's a new build, you generally get a better EPC rating. So that you're hoping that if you do get EPC ratings, we did touch on it earlier, yes, there are EPC green rates available for mortgages. They're not where they need to be at the minute, I have to say, because a lot of them have still got high fees. So you need to still look across the board. Yes, some of them are incentivized for you to get an A to C rating, because that's generally where the lenders are looking. They're not looking at anything less than that when they're looking at giving you a percentage off for a green rate. So we're getting there with lenders, and I do believe they will be targeted soon to come up with some goods to invite some more people to come into the A to C bracket. There even are lenders out there that are doing loans at the minute at rates, and I mean, one is a residential, but it's by Nationwide, that are doing a 0% for them to actually be able to borrow money to do their properties in a environmentally friendly or get the efficiency up. So that's kind of where we are on the buy-to-let market at the minute. And it looks at kind of where we're heading. Brokers can assist landlords with their plans by supporting them with investment plans or ensuring any better rates are identified. So this is where I obviously come in. So our service, just to let you know, is completely independent. We are all self-employed. We work at Temple Mortgage, and our service is to get you the best deal for your circumstances. Okay. The benefits of going through us is the knowledge that we all have. The market's changed dramatically over the last 10 years, but it's changed even more so since kind of October of last year, when rates went up in the hills. So knowing what the lenders want, knowing how to get the best out of putting a case forward to a lender is where we come in. And anything that we recommend is all put into writing to you, so that we're 100% behind what we recommend to you. Okay. And that's my presentation for this evening. So thank you. Got any questions, or if you did want to look at anything in a bit more depth, because obviously it's hard to do here on screens, then let me know.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Emma, thank you so much. Well, it's 7:10, so that means we've got 45 minutes for questions, so you can't leave until all the questions are answered. Do you have any questions? Sir?
Recently, there were people saying that the government released large sums of money to improve energy efficiency in rented homes. Immediately, I got onto Dorset County Council website to apply for that, and it said it's all allocated, it's all gone. I was being accosted. So if anyone can answer that question, is to say, well, where is this money gone, and are we likely to see any more in the future?
Who's best placed to answer that one?
Peter. I wish I knew what pot of money you were talking about, to be honest. The recent issue with funding has been that the government has put most things out to competitions to local authorities. The local authorities have had to bid in, and we have, with the council, continued to bid in for these pots of money, but haven't been successful until that scheme HUG that I mentioned, the Home Upgrade Grant, which is starting next month. So that is something that landlords can access. But with that particular scheme, again, the devil's in the detail, because we can only help people that aren't on mains gas heating. That's the basis of the HUG program. Other funding that's out there, there's something coming up they've decided to call the Great British Insulation Scheme, which is, again, another absolutely awful title. But that is starting supposedly from utility companies in the autumn, and that is targeted at the lower council tax bands this time, so the A, B, C and D council tax band properties. But I'm not certain yet what the criteria is for private rented properties under that programme, because the details are still being finalised, and they're only just coming up this week with the targets that utility companies have got to hit for that. But it's more based around those smaller properties as opposed to the benefits and that sort of side of it. So yeah, there's been no swathes of money like that from the government in the Dorset Council area since September 2021. I think was the last time there was that competition money that came in, and literally that was a very short window. A lot of these programs, the government have said you've either got a year or 2 years to spend this money. So what most local authorities find is they haven't got enough time to mobilise, get the supply chain in place, and actually deliver all that spend in the time that they're given. But if you want to find out about funding, you know where to come. We'll tell you what's available at the time. Yeah, sure.
There's no money anyway. Can I ask about blocks of flats? The problem with blocks of flats is cavity wall insulation.
Yep.
Can't be put into a block of flats because you don't own the entire block,
Sure.
and you therefore got no control over that. And quite often they're concrete floors. So you have in blocks of flats limitations which might make it almost impossible for you to get a C rating.
Sure.
How do you solve that problem?
Obviously you try and engage with the rest of the block, because over the years, then it's 25 years now, we must have done a good 600 or 700 purpose-built blocks in their entirety. They just take time, and there's a lot more chance of someone saying no and that kind of thing. But a lot of the block management companies have kind of changed their position on the fact that they used to class it as an improvement and something that didn't need to go ahead. But it's more put under maintenance now with a lot of those management companies. So it's something that they're more likely to look favourably on. And it's also important to point out now with people who turn around and say, well, I'm not having that wall insulation put in because it's going to cause me damp and all this kind of thing. A lot has changed now in the industry. It's no longer a case of an installer rocking up and saying, oh, how much money can I make out of this job? They have to get it independently checked. So the initial survey is a lot more in depth, and it has to be independently checked. If there's something that's not right, I mean, if it is on the top of Portland, they'll say, no, you can't do it. If it has got rubble in the cavities, they'll say, you better get that landlord to clear the rubble out of the cavities before we'll sign it off to be done. There's all that kind of stuff that comes before the installation now. So in terms of going back to those people who previously said, I don't want it done, the mechanism is a lot safer in terms of doing it, or someone saying, no, it's not a good idea to do it. That's a lot of what has changed.
Is that everybody talks about cavity wall installation,
Mm.
and it's the one thing that's most problematic in an enormous amount of rentals.
In those situations where you've got to get lots of permissions, it is more difficult. But generalising, I'd say 75% of the time, to 3/4 of the time, it is possible, and people will agree to it. And as time goes on, because of the regulations, because of the cost of energy, and all these things, people are more likely to look favourably on it. I mean, we're getting people that have applied for insulation to their own homes that have turned around to us and said, I've been putting this off since the 80s because I wasn't sure about doing it, but the bills are so horrific now. And I've looked into it and I'm a bit more assured about how it's done. I will go ahead and have it done. So often it's that need.
Approaching the government and saying that what you're doing is somewhat difficult to do within the time span.
We do try and make representation when we can do. Us as an organisation, we're only a small organisation compared to some of the other sort of energy agencies and things that you'll find in different parts of the country. So our voice holds very little sway when it comes to us moaning about stuff. But there's always industry representation in these forums and in these meetings, going back to them and saying, why can't you simplify the criteria? Why can't we offer this to more groups of people? I mean, under council funding for years, the council's always tried to make things simple. When there was free installation for everybody from the utility companies, the council was still putting in money to try and fill the gaps where it still wasn't free. When they did free installation for over 70s, the council said, well, we'll put some money in for over 60s and then over 50s and try to help in that way. But it's gone so much the other way now that they're looking at targeting the least energy efficient properties, and then putting all this other criteria on it. It just increases the cost of delivery. Standards have improved. That is the good thing. The standard of everything is improved, and you have to go that much more in depth. But again, that has an implication on the cost of delivering the measures. So you need more funding to do it. So yeah, all we can hope is that at some point they just simplify it a bit. But like I say, in the meantime, we're here to try and sort of demystify it and tell you what is there, what's possible, what's not possible, and maybe send you off to a few other places to get other advice, and so you get to a place where you know whether you can do it or not. Any
other questions?
The landlord incentive that was brought out at our last meeting at the Wellington District Landlords. We've heard that the incentive is being paid now at the 12-month period, not the beginning. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the purpose of that is to ensure that the tenancy is successful for the maximum term that we can get out of the 12-month AST, short tenancy. So yes, on successful completion of the 12 months, the incentive will be paid.
Thank you. Any others? Any more? I've got a couple of questions, if I can have a moment. Two, Emma, proof of rent mortgages.
Yeah.
I hear, are there something new on their way? Can you tell us anything about that? Because obviously, I mean, as landlords, we all want our tenants in there to pay the rent. But at the end of the day, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people aspire to own their own homes. They've been renting forever, but they can't get over that threshold. Is that something we're going to see? A little dicky bird told me that was something that might be coming our way.
As in kind of the 100%?
Well, in terms of...
A bit like what a Skipton are doing for residential.
You can pay the rent the last 5 years, therefore you have, but maybe your salary doesn't quite stack up to that. I don't know. That's what I was hearing. I just wondered, is there a new product on the way, or is it just...
Well, Skipton have brought out a residential product, which is 100% for people that have been renting for a 12-month period. They have to have been renting for a full 12 months as well, and they will generally want to see the same rent being paid over that period. And then what they will take into consideration is the rent they paid and what type of mortgage that could convert to. Now, a few years ago, when rates were low, that may have been a really good idea. And actually, to be fair, before COVID hit, we had heard this was going to come out then. They actually all pulled it, obviously, because of COVID, and now they felt that we're getting back on the right track. However, what we're finding, and especially in the southwest, that if you look at what equates to our average £900 rent to what you would be purchasing at, you would have to be earning about £70,000 for that to still happen. Because it's on an interest rate of 5.49 fixed for 5 years. So the way that they test it is they do 2 affordability calculators. So they do a normal generalised affordability calculator, which is stress rate, currently at 8%. And then they will look at what rent they will pay in, and whatever 2 affordability calculators is the lowest, that's what they look at. So unfortunately, yes, it's great. It gets people talking about mortgages. Do I think it's going to help a lot of people? I have to be honest. I think you're better off encouraging people to find 5%, because then they can use the original affordability, which is generally a lot higher. Sorry.
Or shared ownership.
Or shared ownership. Shared ownerships are still out there, definitely.
And my other question was to you, Paul, about loft insulation. I often get phone calls in strange times of the day. Saying, you've had this loft insulation put in your loft. It's
Toxic.
It's toxic, or it's causing condensation. We've got money from your local authority, and can we come round and see you? And then you go, well, actually, I work for the local authority, and the phone goes dead.
Yeah. That's one of many scams that keep doing the rounds every so often. Yeah, so they phone up and they say, have you had a grant in the last 25 years to have your loft insulated? And a lot of people say, yes, I have. And then they turn around and say, oh dear, well, did you know that stuff's toxic? It's going to cause you breathing difficulties, and it's going to do this, that, and the other, which obviously is complete and utter nonsense. What they will go on to then say is, well, don't worry, what we can do is we can come round and we'll charge you about 1,200 quid to take it out, and then we'll charge you another 600 or 800 quid to put it back in again, which is a nice tidy little number. Thank you very much. So yeah, it is purely a scam. The stuff that's being fitted in people's lofts is mineral fibre insulation. It's a fairly inert product. It's not fiberglass. It's not irritating to the skin. It doesn't cause breathing difficulties. Okay, it's not as nice as having some sheep's wool insulation in your loft, which would be the ideal scenario, but that is about 4 times more expensive at times. I think it's a bit cheaper now, but yeah, it's one of many scams to look out for, definitely.
Why is that not true?
Because
the farmers say that the virtually can't give away
a fleece. Yeah.
pound a fleece.
Yeah, it's a number of factors, I guess. There's not a very big demand and market for it at the moment. They've got to fire treat the stuff and do all the things you'd have to do from scratch on other materials anyway. And all of that combined, I guess, puts that at a premium, really. But
it may be better if the sheep farmers all got together and formed a cooperative, then they could maybe make it a vibe. I have a question for the housing options. When you were describing your system, it sounds almost as though you're a managing agent, i.e. you're doing the setting up, you're doing the paperwork and so on and so forth, but you're also guaranteeing the tenant, which most letting agents don't do. Am I being a bit...
So we're not a guarantor.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But you're finding people and you're...
From the...
But it is very much like being a sort of a tenant finder without having to pay any fees for it. Am I?
No, you're not wrong.
Naive?
No, that's what we do.
Right.
Yeah, we tenant match to the property put forward by the landlord. We pick carefully to ensure that that is a tenancy that lasts a long time, and we help them sustain it.
So if you put tenants in for 1-year tenancies, which one is quite happy to do,
and if it rolled onto a periodic, happy days.
House register.
Sorry?
Yeah,
No, this is from the homelessness service. So these are families or singles or whoever that are in need of accommodation and probably in our temporary accommodation. So we have offers from landlords come to us and go, you've helped me before, I've got a property void, fill it.
many years ago, we met somebody who was brought down to you from Liverpool where you as a council took on properties and ran them as council housing, but we had guaranteed tenants, guaranteed income, but it was slightly lower than the commercial rate.
Okay, so yes, it does. On the back row, Sean, David, and Emma wave. So they have a chat with them at the end. So they're our leasing team. They're our accommodation finders by title, and they will essentially do exactly what you've just said. Find a tenant, we lease it from you. You get just below local market rent, but we do pretty much everything. So, Dave, is there anything you wanted to add? That was the most briefest description of what you do. Just wait for Rachel.
We basically lease a landlord property for a minimum per year. We've got some landlords that we've leased for 15, 20 years. And basically the deal is we lease your property, we take responsibility for it. If a tenant causes any damage, we fix it. At the end of the lease, you should get the property back as you leased it to us. So we still do a full inventory and all the rest of it, like the resettlement team do. As a landlord, you would be responsible for, if, say, for instance, the boiler went, that would be your responsibility to replace it. But again, we can arrange that with our contractors and that, and then we would just bill you. But if there was sort of minor issues, a door sticking or light bulbs need replacing, etc., then our maintenance team would take care of all that sort of thing. So the idea is you get a fixed income, but it's below market rate. But you've got that peace of mind where you don't have to worry about the property or the tenants. Again, if there's any issue with the tenants, we have to deal with it. It's not your problem. If they don't pay the rent, etc., that's all our responsibility.
Is that buying properties in Dorset, or can you have a sunset?
No, this is just Dorset Council. They may have a similar scheme elsewhere, but that's the Dorset Council scheme. Thank you.
And Andy, you wanted to come in? How long does the support go on from your team? Is it 3 years, 5 years?
As long as the tenant needs it. We want to make if someone can hear me. We want to make every tenancy as successful as possible. But we will not put a tenant in there that is nowhere near tenancy ready, because we can't be there forever. We've got to pull out at some point. We should have 6 weeks. Actually, what it looks like is 6 months in a lot of cases. Because
so what I'm trying to say is, if it's say 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening, is there someone you can contact?
So we have an out of hours team for urgent, life threatening, as in property life threatening, illegal evictions happening over the out of hours. But I wouldn't say that our out of hours services for. So that would be the police, that would be the community. What about the community protection team, so our noise nuisance team? We wouldn't.
That takes time.
It would, yeah, it does.
You've got a tenant that's in a property and they're paying up, doing antisocial behaviour. Us landlords want to know that someone's going to be there. If you're not supplying that, you're not going to get us landlords to come on board.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't get that support if you had a private tenant. So what's the
But we're dealing with the clientele that they're dealing with. We can manage that to a certain extent. But if they're putting their support schemes in, they're doing it 9 to 5. We're doing it 24 hours a day.
I disagree, because we've let 15 properties with the resettlement team. I would say we've had one problematic tenant in that whole time. And I think there's a stereotype around the kind of people that people are thinking.
I understand what you're saying.
It's not like that at all. We've got single mothers, we've got families, we've got single men. I've had no problems with 95% of the tenants that we've got. The one that we did have the problem with, as a responsible landlord, we dealt with. And then we would be reported.
Yeah, I understand that. What I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to encourage the landlords to help you.
Thank you.
What we've got to do is show that we're working together and that we can sort it out. Because if it's not in place, if there's something not there, I don't think landlords are going to come on board.
I think we have to remain realistic with what is proportionate to a response that any other letting agent would give in the local community, because ultimately we should be treating our tenants no different than that of the wider community. And so with that, we don't have an out of hours service for a scenario that you've just posed. We would look to our partners in police and other agencies within the council that do run that out of hours service. We just cannot fulfill what you want out of us at that point. And ultimately, they are people of a age over 18, they are adults, they need to take responsibility. So when we start a tenancy, and we will be there and we will support, as you explained, we make that very clear that any breach of your tenancy related to ASB, noise nuisance, illegal drug dealing, anything you're probably thinking of, you are at risk of losing your tenancy and you could be taken to court for that. What we can't do is be there 24/7. I wouldn't sleep.
Landlords have got the role.
Maybe so, and this is the purpose of today, is you see what we do actively, but we can't mitigate every scenario, and I'm sorry for that.
No, I understand.
Thank you.
I think it's quite, I mean, and you know, well, we work pretty well. We've come on in leaps and bounds over the years. You know, since I've been in this role, since we very first met on that first Landlord Forum that many years ago. So, and it's good to engage. This is what we do, and this is why these things are important, because you can get things out on the table, discuss them, and then we take it away. We can have a bit of a cogitation over it and say, okay, is there a bit more that we can offer? Is there, you know, is there another way? Because at the end of the day, what we all want is a successful tenancy. We want, you know, as landlords, we need our rent paying. Thank you.
There's a question here, Graham.
Yeah. In order to secure insurance, house insurance and landlord insurance, I need to be able to assure my insurance company that I have an efficient referencing system.
Okay.
So I have to go the full referencing system and come out with a good score. So how would your system respond to that?
So your insurance will have its own parameters, and we would, of course, try and work to that. So we can provide you, as long as we've got the consent of the client, everything you need to gain a reference. We would not put forward a tenant that we didn't think could pass your referencing. So pointless exercise.
So it's credit referencing.
If that's what your insurance needs, we can't get around that, can we?
No.
And it could be about going back to your insurers and asking, well, what exactly do you need right now? And we would work to gather clients that could meet your insurance's expectations.
Okay.
Hello.
What question for?
Two questions, yeah. Gentlemen.
Mortgages. One of the things about letting your property, if you've got a mortgage on your property, there is an exemption on there for anyone, a tenant on housing benefit. It could be down as an exemption that you can be with some lenders. Is that discriminatory?
I believe so, if I'm being honest. Yes, I do. I do think a lot. I do believe that some of the lenders are starting to overturn that now, especially with a lot of the tenancy acts that are all coming into place at the minute. So I do think a lot more lenders are coming a little bit more forward with it.
Government level, because in theory, considering everything's discriminatory nowadays,
yeah,
that's the one step
you would think that. And to be honest, I've just helped a client with a mortgage that is solely on benefits. Another thing that I don't agree with, because they're solely discriminating, because I could only find one lender that would look at it. Yeah. And there are many lenders out there. So it wasn't too bad for her, so I was quite pleased. But yes, I agree. As mortgage advisors, we do lots of questionnaires for the government, actually, and a lot of past kind of marketing lenders. We're always being questioned, and that is being put forward all the time by us, because it is kind of one of the biggest things is trying to get a mortgage when you are doing a tenancy for them. It is very much a case of there are only a few lenders where it should be everybody. I agree. But yeah, there are a few still.
Gentleman at the back
been very patient.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
It's all
gentlemen.
right.
at the back.
It's all good information. I assume I'm that gentleman. There's a question of the people behind me.
Yeah.
You said that you take on a lease for us for a tenant. Is there a rule of thumb on below market rate? Is there a rule of thumb how much below the market rate it would be?
It's linked to the housing benefit rates, I think from 2011.
Right.
Yeah. So it is lower and can be lower. Yeah, it can obviously be lower than what you could get with, you know, going through a local letting agent.
Yeah.
But we sort of do a comparison when you factor in things like what a letting agent would charge to fully manage your property and other costs you can have.
Yeah.
And it does lower it. But it at the end of the day, it is less than you would get through a letting agent or going through a normal.
Can I jump in? I've been quite quiet. I'm Andrew Billany, Director of Housing, and just something we've been discussing with Graham earlier about whether we could. I'd say simply for today, don't let that hold you back coming to us, because we can always talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So we're recognising local housing allowance rates are way below your expectations. So we're looking to you. Team don't know this yet. We're looking to sort of at least have a look and review where we are, because it's holding us back.
Forget the review, just put.
I mean, I think you've heard enough to think. I think we like to think we've got a good offer. Certainly in terms of that kind of management offer, I think that Ashley and team have described. But we want to make something. We really, you're not doing this for charity. So it's about making sure we get that match. So bear with us on that, and don't hold back in coming to talk to us if you've got property, and we can have that conversation about the gap if there is one.
They based on 12-year-old rates, though.
Yeah.
Asking the wrong.
Well, we're looking. We're arguing with the government at this stage, but every local authority is that rate. It's government wants to keep the housing benefit down.
The current LHA rate is lower already. That's the current rate than standard tenant, expectations for rent.
It's a loophole to do with anything that's used for temporary accommodation for homelessness. I mean, it's you made the point about discrimination. It's a discriminatory point is what we're arguing. So you wouldn't get the more recent LHA rate is used. Yeah. But anyway, the simple reason I'm piping up now is just do talk to us, and we'll look at what we can do.
And there are other potential incentives that could be used as well. So.
Wait, what are we talking here? Are we talking 20% less, 30% less, 10% less?
Again, it can be dependent on, for instance, the size of the property, the area it is. So again, it can be that supply and demand thing. You know, if we're really desperate for a 3-bedroom property in a particular area, we may pay more for it than we would in another area. So it's very much how we work. It's very much based on an individual basis, as in having that initial conversation with a landlord and moving from there.
You're not finding tenants for bed sits, for 1-bedders, 2-bedders, 3-bedders, 4-bedders. I mean, you're covering the whole spectrum in exactly the same way as any letting agent is covering the spectrum for various properties that we all own. I mean, we don't all own 4-bedroom houses. They could be anything from studios to 3 or 4 bedroom houses.
But then again, the 4 bedrooms are more sought after.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We have a need for every single bedroom you've just described.
The letting agent doesn't say, "Oh, we don't deal with 2-bedders and 1-bedders."
No. You know, as far as the leasing scheme, see, we lease 1-bedroom properties, we lease 4-bedroom houses. So yeah, we consider everything.
I think just in addition.
If you've got something, come and talk to us.
Yeah.
That's it, because a conversation costs nothing. Adrian.
We have another question from the floor. One for Peter. I'll just summate this. Some people find that their EPCs are lower than they would expect, particularly when the walls are solid walls, thicker walls than they would be in, say, a thinner cavity construction. Can you make any comment on that?
So I think it's already been slightly adjusted, but there's another update to RDSAT, which is the methodology that they use for EPCs, and I think it's going to alter that a little bit again. But I think they have considered the wall thickness side of it to some extent already, but it's an ongoing process. I guess they're trying to improve it all the time.
They don't live in the real life, in the real world, where there are.
Yeah, it's
building which has got a 2-foot thick wall.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a problem that you have that you.
I think it's
can't deal with.
Yeah, in terms of the EPC, the reason they do reduced data assessment is cost. So if you were to have a full SAP assessment in order to let a property, rather than paying 50 quid for it, I'll be paying 300 or 400 quid for it, and then you talk, getting towards building surveyor rates and things like that. So it'd be a lot longer process. So
but you probably still wouldn't get the.
Well, I'm sure it would be. It would be somewhat different. What you then have to do is you'd have to actually do a proper heat calculation, which is probably a 2.5 hour survey to determine, the exact loss of heat. You might have to use a machine to actually measure heat transfer through the wall and all sorts of things, and that would cost a lot of money. So this is why we're stuck with a reduced data version of what could be a lot better process. But let's face it, what landlord's going to want to pay £1,000 out to have heat loss calculations and SAP assessments and everything else. It just wouldn't work in the market at the moment.
Any further questions?
Can I add to something? It was just about the conversation at the back between leasing and private renting. If one doesn't work for you, you can come to the resettlement team and we can see if we can fill it through the private renter sector at the local, on and all around the local housing allowance, as long as it's affordable. So if one doesn't work, we'll try the other one and we'll come to an agreement either way to try and fill your voids.
So,
wait.
The EPC is got to be up to a C by 2025. But if it's existing tenant, that can carry on to 2028. Now, I was led to believe, and I heard what you said, 2025 for new tenancies. But I have heard recently that the government have done a U-turn on this because it's so hard for some of the landlords to be able to bring their properties up to an EPC grade C by 2025. So I've heard that they've both gone to 2028. So new tenants and existing tenants are all 2028. I've got this for a couple of magazines that I read, like Landlord magazine.
Right.
I can send those to you if you want to.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Yeah, I'd be interested to see it because this is something that we heard from a government official on a phone call about a week ago to say that it was going ahead as is, and the only thing that was up for debate was the £10,000 spend cap. And as soon as they'd agreed that, there'd be an official announcement about everything. But because it's not fully in place, your scenario could still happen, I guess. But that's what we heard on this call. Yeah.
It was 2025 and 2028, and now they said it's all 2028. And I'll send you that information.
Yeah, I'd be interested to have a look. Yeah.
That's exactly what I heard as well, because I actually went.
Yeah. Be interesting to see where that came from, because it came through a landlords association of some kind. It might be wishful thinking, but there's still a conversation going on about that. But like I say, yeah, well, like I say, this was from a government department person on a call with about 100 industry people, saying, I think it was a PEPA conference, which is Property Energy Professionals Association, attended by 100 people, and someone was on there basically saying it's all but signed off apart from that cap. And that was, like I say, just over a week and a half ago that was said. That's my information that I'm going off. So yeah, so who knows? Who knows? There's always the magic U-turn. You never know, do you? You keep your fingers crossed, I suppose.
Can I wind up? That's no more question. Go one more.
Can I ask, is there ever any prospect of council property being built for council housing? Because when all the housing was sold off, where did the money go? Why didn't they build new council housing? I'm sorry.
Let's stop. Yeah. Not getting involved now. I mean, we hear this often, and I work with Andrew about, should the council be building houses? The costs are eye-watering. I mean, we work with the registered providers, and the money, the sort of money that they're investing in the sort of hundreds of millions. It's would be insanity for a local authority like this to put our residents in debt, because that's what we'll do. We'll be borrowing money from the public works loan or wherever we get it from to build that sort of quantity of housing. I think what we're doing, the work we're doing with the registered providers, is the right way to go. We're trying and have tried to sort of fill the gap for temporary accommodation by buying some smaller units. We've had some success as a local authority in that regard. I think this year our housing numbers of new houses built by the registered providers are over 600. There's, you know, we'll never, I don't think, get to that point of building houses unless the government actually gets its finger out and does a proper house building scheme. Andrew, you're going to rescue me?
The thing to emphasise is we have a team, none of them are here, but a team called our enabling team. So we do all we can to get houses built, whether it's and we've got a good, whatever you might think about local housing associations, they're good at building houses. So that's why Graham said what he said, because that works better for here. But fundamentally, so we're having a conversation with Health Authority today, for example, about them wanting to build housing on their estate, and yeah, of course, we'll help them with that. So whichever way we can get houses built or properties built, we'll support it as a local authority. That includes landlords, yourselves, or whatever. If there's more homes, we'll support it. So we get very locked into the discussion. Why doesn't the council build its own? We do a lot to get houses built, and that might seem like we're splitting hairs, but it's the most efficient way we can use our powers, I guess.
Land trusts, or is that a...
Well, that's an example of what we support. Several community land trusts. We went to one in Drimpton, isn't it? I think. Great scheme, developed by the good energies of that community land trust and the parish council. So that's a good example of what we do to get others to build. Frankly,
basically, you're saying that the risks of regulation are such that it's not a good investment for the council to invest in property.
Well, it's not a good investment for them to. It's that to get the scale that we talked about of mass council house building, if you like, like we saw in the sort of 1960s and so, it's becoming. It would be eye-watering. I mean, we go to some of the developments that our RPs, registered providers, build out, and you think, how they just spent, I don't know, 28 million on that bit. Well, that's just one estate, one housing estate, or whatever you want to call. So it's not. I just don't think that it's something that we should be doing. I think as an enabling council, we do well, and I think we're better off concentrating on what we do well, working with our partners. Because after all, at the end of the day, people like Astor, Sovereign, Magna, Abri, that's their core business. It's not our core business. I mean, our core business is we have hundreds and hundreds of services that we run as Dorset Council. We can't just take, and it would be a whole new team. I mean, can you imagine just to run it, how many people we'd need to do that? And again, it falls on the public purse, whereas what we're delivering through the RPs doesn't cost anyone in here anything. It's a good thought, isn't it? Any more? No? Yes, sir. Go on then.
For refugees, I'm not sort of doing the poverty bit, but what is the government's attitude towards helping you to provide some extra money towards this, or is this all pie in the sky?
I think I've got a perfect person to answer that question sat behind you. I mean, in terms of what's actually happening now in Dorset, it's a challenge. Shall I put it that way?
We're not a rich council. So.
We're not a rich council, and as you heard earlier this evening, we've got 5,500 people on our own register. So it puts that extra pressure on it.
I mean, maybe I've sort of drift away now.
Yeah.
There are things that quite a lot of successful work that you.
Thanks.
There are things that have been done. So I'll talk to you if you like.
Okay. All right. I'm going to wind it up there. Thank you for your